Hi, I am Amanda Cassar, and welcome back to season 3 of Financial Secrets Revealed, where we're meeting some new experts. Today, I am joined by Afsha Butt, all the way from Toronto, and Uzair, who's based in the beautiful Edmonton, British Columbia, Canada. So, welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
Hey,
having
thanks
us.
for having us. It's Edmonton, Alberta, but it's not
Edmonton, Alberta, it is
Yeah.
too. Yeah, sorry, I've just got BC in my head from being
no.
there
I
last
know.
week. So.
You know what? We got the Rocky Mountains. It's just as beautiful.
Oh, absolutely gorgeous. No, stunning, stunning country. And I really loved my time, my day trip up to Whistler. That was just gorgeous. So expensive, but gorgeous.
Yeah.
And
Sounds about
everywhere I
right.
went, there was an Aussie waiting on me, hand and forth, running
It's
the
like you
whip.
never left home.
Yeah, serving in the restaurants. I couldn't get away from them. So now, today, I want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole in the world of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, and talk about, is this here to stay? Is it part of our future? Why are we still talking about it? Do a bit of a deep dive into it. So, I I suppose the first question is, what is cryptocurrency and how is it different from, the cash in my wallet or the money in the bank? Who
So
wants to take that one?
I guess I'll take that one. And it's basically, you can think of cryptocurrency as a digital form of money. So in your traditional wealth management field, we consider it an alternative investment. And basically, that's just anything that doesn't fit into right equity or fixed income or cash category. And one of the key features of cryptocurrency is that, it's typically decentralized, meaning there isn't a government body or a central bank that controls it. That's the idea of it. And it uses a blockchain technology for it to work. So basically, you can think of blockchain technology as a ledger or like a receipt with all these transactions. So it tracks all the transactions. So every time someone makes a transaction with cryptocurrency, it gets added to this chain. And then this technology basically ensures that every transaction is recorded and visible to everybody. So the whole idea is that you're trying to make it transparent and secure.
Now, one of the main forms of cryptocurrency everyone's heard of is Bitcoin. Is there how many different forms of cryptocurrency actually are there now aside from Bitcoin?
When you talk about cryptocurrencies, yeah, the Bitcoin is like, it is pretty much on its own. In the term cryptocurrency, like the tokens itself, there's probably 60, 70,000 because anyone can make it up. It doesn't take anything to make it up. All you can do is just type a piece of code and boom, you can have it, right? So to compare the two doesn't really make sense. It's just a piece of code on the internet. Anybody can write it. Now the value of it is determined by the market, and that's a completely different question that we're asking.
So, for people who want to get started and really don't know where to look, apart from, the taxi driver gave them a hot tip, what's
Mhm.
an interesting place or a good spot to get some more information and find out more before you want to dive in and do some investing?
I think reading the Bitcoin Standard is a great book to get you started to understand why Bitcoin even exists, what the problem it's supposed to solve is. And then there's also other lots of YouTube videos, lots of information out there that talk about technology itself, and they talk about why cryptos, like why blockchain technology needs to exist, the benefits, the use cases, et cetera. But you also have to be very careful and to not get suckered into the marketing hype of a lot of these technologies, which it's like a marketing play because it's there is a lot of bad actors in the world of crypto too, right? It's I think everyone has seen this year like anyone that was anybody in 2021 is now either in jail or dead, right? So like it's like the biggest and the baddest in 2021 are all done for, right? So like there's a lot of bad actors in crypto, so it's important to be cognizant of that. That Bitcoin is one thing and crypto is a different thing entirely, and you want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of thinking that they're all the same.
And blockchain technology entirely different again. Can you also go into a little bit more about blockchain that underlies the crypto and also other assets, how it works?
Blockchain is a technology which pretty much just says that, hey, here's a public ledger or like a decentralized spreadsheet which has all the different transactions on it. that are agreed upon by multiple parties in exchange for energy or a proof of stake or anything like that. So if you think of like a bank, right? Like if I sent you $1,000, I would go to my bank and then they would put it in their ledger. Uzair sent Amanda $1,000. And we have to trust that the bank has it there and it's all good, right? And they'll send the information to your bank. And it's a lot of human or third party intervention. And then they can also ask questions like, where's this money going to? Why are you sending it? Who are you sending to? And they can even reverse that transaction too, right? But when it comes to cryptocurrency, I can send any amount of wealth to anyone in the world without having a third party involved in it. And that's something that's never happened before.
So was that really, like, I suppose if we want to go down the path, was it the nefarious reasons of trying to fly under the radar where we talk about, it can fund terrorism and, be involved in, child pornography rings or trafficking? Is that where it sort of came from and it still has that connotation that people who want to fly under the radar can use this technology? Or is it now much more, look, this is acceptable, mums and dads can invest and do this as well?
So I find it funny when people bring up that argument when it comes to Bitcoin because it negates the fact this is a public ledger. Anyone can read your transactions. So if you were going to do nefarious activities or do money laundering, cash is better.
It always is.
Right? Just deal with cash. Why would you put your transaction on a public ledger which anyone can read on the internet? They're eventually going to find out, wait, what's this transaction for? And you can find a money trail that way, right? So it never really, that argument was more like just people who didn't really understand would just talk about that as a nefarious thing. But the real idea is Bitcoin was created because of the 2008 financial crisis, where we trust our monetary policy to a handful of people who have proven themselves to be self-serving in the way they deal with things, right? And when the financial crisis happened, who got the bailout? The big banks. Who paid the price? Everyone else, right? Because the system is designed such that it's a top-down system where a handful of people go behind closed doors and they decide what happens with anyone's money. Are we going to print money? Are we going to take money? It doesn't really matter. It depends on the decision of a few people, right? And what the ethos of Bitcoin is that we want to get rid of that. We want to make sure that we have set rules that nobody can change. And then with these rules, if people do want to change, everyone has to agree on it. And that is kind of the core philosophy of Bitcoin. All things that come out of it are just like, unintended consequences, some might say.
Interesting. Afsha, you've got the financial planning background and still have an interest in a financial planning firm. We've mentioned already that it's like an unregulated market. What does that mean for people who are wanting to invest? Does that mean, oh, well, if it goes, tough luck, you've got no recourse? Should I stick with more traditional investments? What are the options and things I need to consider with crypto?
Yeah, I mean, in our world, it's definitely really important to think about risk management, right? So the first thing you want to identify is your risk tolerance. We typically say that something is risky based on its volatility. And in the crypto world, Uzair and I were just talking about this. We say that, volatility is crypto. You're here for the volatility. So if it comes back to your, traditional portfolio, you should be a high risk investor. You should have the appetite for a certain percentage of your portfolio to go up and down and be very volatile, right? So we can invest in a traditional portfolio. We can have crypto, but it's usually through an ETF. We still can't go in and buy actual Bitcoin off of an exchange for a traditional portfolio. So we always recommend certain percentages in a traditional portfolio. And that's if you have a high risk appetite.
So you're not going in with your food on the table money, hoping for a quick buck and just turn around and do the flick and you're going to be wealthy.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's very different depending on who you're talking to, even just between how Uzair and I will approach it or talk about it. It depends on the type of client in front of you or the customer in front of you. If someone's coming in to WealthVerse and saying, we want you to manage our money, we're going to look at that very differently than someone who's coming into our crypto education side and saying, I want to learn about it. How do I access these things? Where do I start? And that kind of thing.
Uzair, you've probably got a really different take on it to a fairly traditional financial advisor perspective where, we are looking at risk management, we're looking at small percentages, we're looking at your profile and your appetite for risk. For someone like yourself who is probably 100% investor, totally committed. You understand what you're doing. How risky is it for someone like you who goes, look, this is me, this is what I'm doing, I'm all in?
I don't think it's risky at all because my definition of risk is different. I don't think volatility is a risk. I think missing out. I think that I hate people say like invest money you can afford to lose. I'm like I can't afford to lose any money. This is my money. I need to pay. And I can't afford to lose it, right? So, but for me, I need to put my money in an asset class which I think will have the most upside with the lowest, with the highest chance of having that upside without the risk of going to zero. So when I look at Bitcoin, I'm like, okay, this is an asset class which is like the S&P 500 of crypto. I can just go all in on it. It survives so much. It's got the Lindy effect. Everyone's tried to take it down and it keeps on coming back. It is on a cycle, 3 years up, 1 year down. Like it's given to you in a silver platter. And I think like the biggest trick the devil ever played was tell you the markets are efficient. This opportunity exists right now. Take advantage of it, because if you just psych yourself out of it, it's going to be like, oh, I should have done that back in the day. But it's like, it's here. Just take it until you're proven otherwise. But that's where my philosophy is on that. So I put all
Having
my money
said
in it.
that, have you ever lost?
I have, yeah. I lost money in the FTX exchange. I lost the initial Bitcoin that I made. Like, there's obviously going to be like unknowns, right? But you can mitigate that. Those are custody risks. You can mitigate that with just buying through an ETF or not getting too deep in the rabbit hole like I did. And not, I was too deep in the rabbit holes. I was like all sorts of day trades and over trading and this and that. But if you're just a typical person who's like, hey, if there's one asset I can go all in, it could be I think a Bitcoin ETF would be a safe way to do it.
Yeah, I
So
also
this is,
compare it.
sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just saying I compare it in the traditional finance world. People will compare, something like a bank stock, a blue chip, to something like marijuana stock, right? And so I think it's really important to come into the cryptocurrency world and say that like Bitcoin and then altcoins are very different. We're talking about two different
Yeah.
things.
And your experiences there. So you've been around this, market that's still very new for a lot of people. For how long now?
I've been around here for 2017 is when I first dabbled in it, 2016, 2017. Yeah. But I've known about Bitcoin back in 2010. And yeah, I thought it was so stupid because the online forums I was on, it was people would say you have to buy it and hold it. It's going to be the next greatest thing ever. Trust me, don't mess this up. Um, but it was so easy to mess up because people seem to forget that back in the day, the way to get it was to PayPal some money to some random person. And there was no way to store it. There was no easy, like right now, it's so difficult to it's not user friendly at all. But it was even more so back in the day. I try to figure out how to use a wallet, and I just it was very difficult, and I wasn't
So
very technically
are there
astute.
trends that come through in the cryptocurrency market? What's happening right now? And is it still likely to evolve into the future?
What do you mean by likely to evolve in the future?
Well, we have trends in markets all the time. It might be
Mhm.
that resources are the flavor of the moment. There's lots of manufacturing going on globally, and resources do really, really well. Tech has been the flavor of the decade that, we've had what we call the FANGs, the Facebook, Amazons, all those sort of
Mhm.
things growing. So in cryptocurrency, are there any trends? Like maybe Bitcoin was the original one that people got interested in. Now there's
Yeah,
lots of other cryptocurrency
I
coins.
would stick. So when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, like within crypto, there's a lot of trends, and it's called narrative trading. But they happen in a span of weeks. So to talk about crypto trends can be very misleading because what's trending right now is probably going to be done in a week or two.
Okay.
And it can get people very caught up in the wrong place, especially if they're not paying attention 24/7, right? So the trend is just focus on the majors like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. But for the average person, I would just only touch Bitcoin because you don't really think twice about it. You can just be like, hey, it's always going to be here. If you think about it, like, hey, if I put money into something and I forgot about it for 10 years, what would I put my money into? And the answer always comes down to Bitcoin. It's the only one
So
you can trust to be here.
when we talk about future trends, obviously we've got global markets now, globalization's
Yeah.
everywhere. There are some trends that people are looking at on a global scale. So, electric vehicles, we've got the carbon neutral by 2050, carbon net zero, those sort of things,
Yeah.
which then in turn mean what do we need to invest in the next 25 to 30 years for those sort of things to happen. European countries going, that's it, no more petrol-based vehicles on the roads by 2030. What sort of investments could we make to go, well, if that's going to be the next trend, do I jump on lithium? Do I jump on, the EV stocks? Do you see big changes, Afsha, coming like with climate change and those sort of big trends in future that will influence market and I suppose clients' interest in investments?
I kind of want to, in terms of the question for like the future, I mean, one of the things that we were talking about investing or thinking about is how to use AI, properly. But I want to make sure you understand, like, just in terms of electric vehicles, what was like, if you want to reframe your
No,
question.
no, it was just as a future trend. Like it's one of those things that right now it's here, it's happening. Are there other things? And AI is the perfect example
Yeah.
of where things are going. You can't go to a conference now without an AI specialist getting up there and having a chat about Chat
Yeah.
GPT and the 70,000 other types of apps that are already out there. So
Yeah.
AI is probably the perfect one to segue into a future trend.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one, right? Like, I mean, every single, like you said, seminar and everything we're seeing out there is like how to use AI in your business, right? And everyone's saying, oh my God, what's going to happen with just something simple like just ChatGPT and the growth of it. And, they're saying, oh, AI is going to take over our jobs. But it's like, no, it's people using AI is going to take over our jobs, right? So I think over time, the idea is that you almost have to utilize AI in everything that you're doing. And you have to see where it can help you and where you need to keep human interaction at the forefront.
Uzair, do you have any comment on AI and how that's going to shape future markets?
I think that with AI, I can't tell you because I think it's like every time I think that I can't predict it. It's like a monkey trying to figure out how a building was built. I think the technology is evolving so fast that I'm at the point where I'm just like, unless you're keeping up every single day, which I try to, you still can't because it's like it's getting to a point where I can't even comprehend the intelligence of it, right? And what the people are thinking about it.
I think the main thing is keeping up with it. Like you said, you can't, but I
Yeah.
think getting really good at seeing where it can hurt for me, I'm looking at it in the form of business. And for it's constantly like, will this help our business or will it not? So, for example, when I say front facing, it's like, I don't want any AI being the first point of contact for a client coming in. You want that to be a human based interaction. And like, even for example, like something like Chat GPT evolving so fast, I think it's really important to think about how you can utilize it and where it can actually hurt your business.
How do you use it in your financial advisory practice right now?
Um, so one of the things I guess this is more to do with like automations and what we're more implementing, not necessarily AI just yet. Because at first, I remember when Uzair and I were talking about this, I'm like, oh, I want it to be that there's a person who responds right away. And it was actually, we decided that we're not going to use AI for that because we don't want it to feel like a chat bot. You know, we want it to be that there's a person who's answering, and in the back end, we are actually, you have automation set up that can help with the operation side of things.
I think there's probably going to be in the future AI that is so good it feels like you're talking to a human. When someone comes onto your website and answers your questions, and there is going to be a time
Yeah.
when it's not going to be a problem because it will be that sophisticated. So
Yeah. It's like, for me, it's actually where I can tell you I decided not to use it. You
there's a
know?
lot of people who really don't love it. And I think when it was still like stuck back in 2019 and sort of felt
Yeah.
like it was living in the 80s, it was like, I'm asking you questions about, modern politics. And it's like, yeah, sorry, I'm only going up to 2019.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's
I
not real helpful.
Well, some of the ones that I'll say, okay, where we did use is like AI that helps you record notes, right? Like back in the day, you're paying someone to take notes, and it's so inefficient because you're relying on that person to be able to be in your meetings with clients and decide what's important to write down and what's not, versus now you just have something that's being transcribed for you, and then you can take what you want, right? In the traditional wealth management field or anyone in finance, like taking good notes is everything. And so
Yeah.
that's something
Mhm.
where we've brought in AI, into our company, where we no longer have to guess what happened. It's all recorded, it's all transcribed, and it's not a human being in the meeting.
Yeah, we didn't have to send it off to, the Philippines or some other country to get someone to sit there and type it out on Odesk or
Mhm.
Elance like we
Yeah,
did back in the
right.
day.
And
It
think
has
about,
come a long way.
and I wonder in courtrooms, right? That was the question I had, of when that gets
Stenographers.
involved. Yeah, it's a full-time
Yeah.
job. Like, that's a career, right? Or even for doctors, there's people who are transcribers still, and I'm curious to see how AI works there. If they start to utilize the technology and trust it, essentially, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lovers or haters or love to hate
Yeah.
with the tech. Do you use AI much or have comments on where it's going?
Yeah, so for my business, I've implemented or building out a virtual agent that will talk to customers on the phone instead of having voicemail. The only thing is the script became really big, so it's like a lot of processing power behind it. So I'm really excited about that because it's crazy good, and the level of the exponential growth that I've seen in it from when I first started a few months ago to now, and how quick and fast it is, and like it does sound somewhat natural. Um, that's why I was like, it's just moving so fast. I'm like, we're talking about a matter of weeks and months here in this thing. It's exponentially better, right? So I don't know what's going to happen next, but I use it for that. I use ChatGPT obviously for everything else, and I try to use it to analyze my business, find problems with it using data analyzer. I also use the API to structure unstructured data. Um, like for example, like a simple automation I built for myself is like there's so much information on the internet, right? And I have to filter through it. So I just click save, and then the chat GPT reads it out for me, brings up the main points, and saves it into my Notion document, just so I can look at it later on and be like, hey, what's the things I need to worry about? And that's kind of my way of dealing with information overload. But I try to use it. I use it every day.
But is
Yeah.
that also a flaw, I suppose, of AI, that if it's using information that's on the internet, I mean, we know that not everything on the internet is true. I mean, just look up a Wikipedia site, probably on yourself, and see how much
Yeah.
rubbish is actually in there. So, is there the chance that the information that the AI is collecting, because it can only use what's available, that will be giving flawed
So
results?
accuracy does go down, but the productivity goes up so much that it makes up for the lack of accuracy. There's
So, it's a
people that
trade off.
are, yeah, so like when it comes to programming and stuff like that, people are like, I'm so much more productive now that I don't even the opportunity cost of me not using Chat GPT to do the same task is too high that I have to continue using Chat. Like I can't stop.
Yeah.
You can't even test yourself not doing it.
Yeah. No, I've used it myself. If you're after ideas for content on your blogs or that sort of thing, like, what are
Yeah.
some of the top questions that clients ask that I can answer? It just makes life so much easier in a content hungry space that, it's giving you
Hmm.
all these ideas. Do you believe there's going to be regulation and compliance, not just in the AI space, but that it'll eventually come into also look at crypto and all this emerging technology? Do governments have a place where they can, start putting an ethical lens or a moral lens or a regulatory lens over things like crypto and AI going forward?
I mean, my answer is I hope they don't, because whenever governments get involved in anything, it just ruins it. That's when you start building these pockets of inefficiency where you don't let the free market take care of it, right? Like for example, let's talk regulating AI. Who's going to decide what's okay and what's not AI wise? Like who decides? Who's going to be morality police and be like, okay, they can't do this, but we can do this.
Mhm.
But this group person can do this, but they can't do this. Then you start building like, okay, these guys, the average person will not figure out how to go over their guardrails, right? But there's going to be smart people that will figure out how to get around their guardrails. And now you just build a two class of people: the average person and the ones that know. And that's what happens in society when governments get involved, right? Like when companies get really big, what's the first thing that they do? They go to the government and they're like, listen, let's prevent anyone else getting the same spot as me. Let's bring in regulations to prevent that, right? And
We
that's
want
just
a
human nature.
monopoly.
Yeah, and that becomes like human nature. You have to they play that game, right? So like that's why I'm just like governments can't get involved. That's when things go bad. But and they're also not going to be as fast. They're not going to know it's going to move so fast, right? That we don't know if governments can even get involved in an effective way.
the whole like the whole thing
Sorry.
about cryptocurrency and even just AI is that people are like it's unregulated, you know, let's have control over something, but obviously the idea is that it gets regulated. They want some form of control. I don't ask me who they is, you know, but the idea is that they want to start to control it because they're like, well, there needs to be some sort of, again, risk management, right? I think that it definitely will happen whether we want it or not.
So for average mum and dad, go to work every day, come home, have a little investment portfolio, think, look, I don't know much about it. I probably won't invest directly in crypto. Don't have much of a need for AI in my life. Seems like a good thing going forward as an investment idea, as a trend. How can I get involved? Is it the same answer, Afsha, as the crypto? Like just look at an ETF?
Well, I mean, that's actually how Uzair and I started working together, right? We basically decided that we want to provide a service where we provide a framework on how to invest in crypto, you know? So it's not for the day traders. It's not the people who want to look at this every day. I mean, you know, you can get insight from it, but essentially the idea is that you get calls every week, right? You have entrance or exit positions, and our goal is to catch the trend, right? So we're giving education every week. We're providing information on what's happening and then giving you a framework on what to do. And it takes away that um, concept of like, I have to trade my time to do this.
Yeah. So we just use a trading model, which the idea behind it is to catch the meat of the move. We want to catch the major trends, you know, the one when you go from Bitcoin at like 15,000 to 60,000. You want to catch that trend. You want to catch the meat of that trend. So you might get in like 17,000 and sell at 35 or 55,000, right? The goal is to always manage your risk. Like we don't want to be in situations where we're holding a 50% loss. We want to make sure that we're never fighting the trend. You know how like in the saying is like buy low, sell high, but you know when everyone knows about it, it's probably not true. So the reality is like it's better to buy high and sell higher, and that's what we try to do with trend trading.
Or sell higher?
Yeah, buy high and sell higher. There's no need to buy low.
Well, although that would be nice where possible. So when
Yeah.
people come to you for education, what's the sort of process? Do you just point them in the direction of some websites and books? Are there courses they can do? How can you self-educate in this space apart from watching a few YouTube videos and hoping it's right?
Uh, we do a combination of one-on-one, depending on the needs of the person, and group calls, and just text messages sent to you being like, hey, this is what we're looking at now. We're trying to build a community more than anything else of other people that are in the same boat as you. And then people start helping each other out too, right? And that's the real basis of how we help. And we're like, listen, here's a bunch of information. Depending on how involved you want to be, here's what you need to know. And the idea is to minimize the amount of noise and just make it as actionable as possible. Like, listen, I am giving it to you in the most easiest to do way, taking the least of your time. Take it and run with it.
Do you think we'll see a time where large institutional investors, instead of the mums and dads, like, so say the Vanguards of the world, the Goldman Sachs, do you think they'll be looking at cryptocurrency investments themselves?
That's exactly what's happening now. The latest BlackRock is trying to get all in on crypto, and all these big guys, particularly, all submitted their ETF applications. They're all trying to get into crypto. Now the question is, when's the SEC going to approve it?
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest and the baddest are all trying to get into space.
What does that mean for, I suppose we're doing a regulated investment like an ETF or a share then into what's an unregulated market. How is that going
So
to impact like a
it,
traditional portfolio?
when the ETF is official, it's going to be regulated because that's a sign that the government's like, hey, this is a legit asset class that's going to stay. But what's going to happen is like you brought that point where the incentives are going to change. Now, before financial advisors, they didn't make any money off crypto. So a lot of them just called it a scam and hogwash and said, don't bother wasting your time. But now they'll be able to charge a fee to manage your portfolio. So you're going to hear a different tune. And then I also think that, this is also like the last cycle that you're actually going to get the outsized returns, because as the floodgates open up and everyone is starting to invest in it, the returns are going to be muted because how much big it's the asset will become too big.
And it will then, I suppose, coexist in a traditional portfolio without
Yeah.
you having to go off the record to go, well, I'm going to keep this 5% over here and take it to someone. It'll just be part of a standard portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like emerging markets, you put 5 to 10% in it, and you say that's the risky part of your portfolio, and you're hoping for big wins, but there'll be lots of volatility.
Yeah. Fascinating future ahead. With the future trends, is there any other stuff? I know we sort of touched quickly on EVs and climate change. Do you see any trends where that's going to go, how AI can help or improve those others, or trends I haven't even mentioned at all yet?
There was two things I was going to say. One, like on the AI piece, I mean, you talked about it in the marketing. What I think it really will help with, like, people's strengths of when it comes to forms of communication. So some people's strength is speaking, some people's strength is writing, and I feel like AI will really help in terms of translating that. Whether it's speaking into something, recording it, and then it turning it into a LinkedIn article, which is something that I've seen, and it helps so much. I think it's just going to help. A lot of people are like, oh no, podcasts are my thing. No, 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 YouTube videos are my thing. I feel like there's going to be a little bit more integration using AI in that field. And then the other piece, just in terms of like future stuff, and where Uzair was saying we're creating a community, we're really, when we meet once a week to talk about what's happening in the crypto market, some of the things that we've been excited about more recently are participating in airdrop projects. So essentially, we're finding different projects that we can be a part of. And the idea is that when you participate in and follow a different, set of rules and become a participant, you get paid out in that coin's shares. It's the best way I can describe it. Maybe Uzair, you can share a little bit more about it. But the best part about the community is that some people who join end up learning as well. And we put all our heads together. And like you said, you cancel out the noise and you say, what's our focus? How are we going to make money off of this? And you're not shy from approaching something that's more new, like you usually see in traditional finance fields.
Yeah, so when it comes to crypto, it's a separate market, right? So with airdrops, it's the equivalent, it's a crypto equivalent of, like, remember Uber's refer a friend and get $20 for a free ride? It's
Yeah.
their way of incentivizing people to use the crypto platforms, get educated, and hopefully long term that they stay. But it's a very expensive way of bringing in users, so it's probably not going to last that long.
So for people who are going, look, this is all really interesting. I don't think it's going away. I've got my head around it. 6 years in, I am still a new person. There's obviously some common mistakes that people must make. Can you run through a few of those that when people start getting, is it the excitement and they go all in on something they haven't done research on? So what are some common mistakes and how do we avoid them?
Well,
I
one is
think the
like,
biggest mistake.
oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay,
I was going to say the biggest mistake. Here
go
you
ahead.
go.
I
There
was
you
gonna
go.
say number one is like stop getting advice off your timeline, right? Like if you see something, it's already picked up, you've lost it, right? There's so many times where it's like, oh my god, I'm going to start getting into Bitcoin now. I saw that there was a big spike, and that's exactly when you shouldn't buy it. Although the idea is you buy it high and get it higher. Just stop getting advice off your timeline. You've missed the boat. Number two is like, especially with cryptocurrency, if you're going to own it, get a hardware wallet. So essentially, you're taking it off of what you call an exchange and you're owning it yourself. That'll take away from it. So all this stuff that's happened with like FTX and different ways that people have lost their money, a lot of it has just been that it's on an exchange, and we've seen it in crypto where they go bankrupt and then you lose your money. So that's one way. Or the other one we talked about, which is buy the ETF, and then that takes away the custody risk. Go ahead, Uzair.
Now, I was going to say the biggest mistake that most people make is, like, obviously the custody risk and making sure that, but it's like they ignore crypto until it shows up on the newspaper. Like, oh, I should have bought it, but they don't realize that the way the market works is that it's a whole lot of nothing for a long time, and then everything happens all at once. And when you keep on waiting for that everything to happen, it's like a shot up like this, and then you start buying, and it might go up, but it likely will keep going down. And that's the time that you feel best and the safest to buy is normally the riskiest time to buy. The way to think about it this way is like when it feels the least risky to buy crypto is actually when it's the most risky.
Love that old expression, bottom pickers get smelly fingers. So just that goes in all markets.
Yeah, the trend is your friend.
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing your insights. I hope we've helped some people get a bit more au fait with what's going on in that world. I do want to make really clear, especially for this episode, that obviously none of this is personalised, tailored financial advice. We're just providing some general information that's not all about your circumstances. So please, if you are looking, make sure you do go to people who know what they're talking about if you'd like a bit more information. Guys, can you tell us a little bit more about your education system? So where can people go and find you if they're looking to do a bit more research?
They can go to wealthverse.ca. Like Uzair mentioned, we can do a one-on-one and kind of understand what your needs are. If you're a complete beginner or you're already involved and you want to be part of the community that we're building, there's definitely opportunities for joining group spaces and learning a lot more.
Excellent. I'll make sure that address is definitely in the show notes. That'd be cool. And look, are there any last minute books? Do you want to repeat the name of that book that you mentioned earlier? Is there, or if there's any others that you recommend people have a look at?
I think the Bitcoin Standard is a good starting point. Nothing really else that comes top of mind.
That's the top of the pops.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much, guys, for sharing your insights. Really appreciate it. Think mind blown again every time I go down this rabbit hole with someone. It just is. I suppose it's so mind expanding to know what's ahead. It's just an incredible world we live in now, where technology is just sort of booming. I mean, I a kid of the 80s, I didn't own mobile phone till I was about 20 years old. So I think I've had the best of both worlds, or I've grown up pre-social media, thankfully, but managed to navigate it now. So I'm in a really good spot. So again, thank you so much for sharing, guys. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Bye.